For years my husband had forbidden me to set foot in his warehouse. "Don't ask, Eleanor. That place is off limits," he would bark every time I dared to question. His tone was final, his jaw set in that hard line that told me I'd be fighting a losing battle if I pressed further. And so, I didn't. I learned long ago in our marriage that pushing Harold past a certain point never ended well. I'd smile faintly, swallow my curiosity, and return to the kitchen, the laundry, the papers I graded for my third graders. I told myself I didn't need to know. I told myself his secrets were harmless. But secrets rot inside a marriage, like fruit left too long on the counter. And now, after 45 years together, the man who kept that warehouse locked tighter than his heart was gone. Dead from a sudden stroke that stole him away one quiet evening as he read the newspaper. He left behind his pension, his car, his silver watch I'd bought him on his 60th birthday, and a silence so wide it swallowed me whole. I thought I'd already gathered everything he'd left. That was until the lawyer, a sharp-faced man in his 40s named Dean Randall, called me into his office 3 weeks after the funeral. His words still echoed in my ears as I sat in the driver's seat, staring down at the heavy silver key on my lap. "It's yours now, Mrs. Whitmore," he had said, sliding it across the desk. "The warehouse." Harold was clear in his instructions. "You are to open it, and you alone." He wrote only one note. Dean passed me a folded slip of yellowed paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. In Harold's stiff handwriting were 6 words. "Look for my secret. It's yours." I had stared at those words, my throat dry. For a moment, anger bubbled up. After all these years of being shut out, after a lifetime of sacrifice, he still toyed with me from the grave. Yet curiosity won. So here I was, parked in front of a squat, grey warehouse on the edge of town. It sat between a tire shop and the old train line, its corrugated metal walls weathered and streaked with rust. Weeds curled through cracks in the asphalt. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a forgotten storage unit. I ran my thumb over the key's smooth grooves, my stomach in knots. I had given Harold my entire life. My youth, my dreams of travel, even my career beyond teaching. I had raised our 2 children mostly alone, packed his lunches, ironed his shirts, and smiled politely at dinners where he bragged about himself while forgetting my name in the conversation. And now, standing at the foot of the one place he had guarded so fiercely, I wondered if I had ever really known him at all. The door was thick steel with a padlock the size of my fist. My breath hitched as I slid the key into the lock. It clicked open with a sharp sound that seemed too loud in the still morning air. For a second, I hesitated. My hands were trembling so badly I pressed them against my skirt to steady them. What if I found something terrible? Another woman's clothes, a stash of letters, or worse. What if the life I thought I had lived was nothing but a lie? I shook my head hard. "No, Eleanor," I whispered. "Whatever it is, you've lived through worse. You've lived through him." The hinges groaned when I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first: dust, wood polish, and something faintly metallic. Sunlight spilled through the crack behind me, slicing into the darkness. Slowly, the warehouse revealed itself. I froze. Rows upon rows of crates towered up to the ceiling, stacked neatly like a library of secrets. Each one had polished wooden panels, with brass nameplates gleaming faintly under the dust. They weren't random boxes, they were catalogued, numbered, arranged with meticulous care. My shoes clicked softly against the concrete floor as I stepped inside. The sound echoed, the space cavernous yet strangely intimate. I reached the first open crate and peered inside, expecting junk, tools, rusted machinery, or spare tires. Instead, the light caught on something dazzling. My mouth fell open. Inside were violins. Not cheap, dusty instruments, but gleaming wood carved with such precision it made my chest ache. Their varnish glowed in the sunlight, warm amber and gold. I picked one up carefully, my fingers trembling. Even without touching the strings, I could tell, it was priceless. I set it down gently and opened the next crate. Jewelry. Rows of velvet cases filled with diamond brooches, sapphire necklaces, pearl earrings so lustrous they looked like frozen drops of moonlight. My knees wobbled. I stumbled back, pressing a hand to my mouth. Everywhere I looked, more treasures emerged. Antique clocks, oil paintings wrapped in canvas, stacks of gold coins, crystal figurines that caught the light and fractured it into rainbows on the walls. It was like walking into a museum. No, a kingdom. I felt dizzy. For 68 years, I had clipped coupons, patched old clothes, worried over every grocery bill, and argued with Harold about replacing the dishwasher. He had told me we couldn't afford new tires for the car, couldn't afford vacations, couldn't afford a new couch when the springs poked through. All that time, while I stretched every dollar until it screamed, he had been hiding this. Tears stung my eyes. I thought of all the birthdays where he had gifted me flowers bought at the discount store. All the times he'd scolded me for buying the fancy cereal because it was 50 cents more. All the times I'd begged him to take me to the ocean, just once, and he said we didn't have the money. The truth crushed me. It wasn't that we didn't have the money. It was that he didn't want me to know. I stumbled deeper into the warehouse, past crate after crate. My fingers brushed over canvases I recognized from textbooks. Was that a Monet? My chest rose and fell as I traced the nameplate. It was real. Why? Why had he hidden this from me? I sank onto a wooden crate, my body shaking. The silence pressed in, heavy and unforgiving. For the first time in my life, I realized I had been married to a stranger. Harold Whitmore, the man who never once said "I love you" without prompting, the man who kept his feelings locked away tighter than this warehouse, had been living a secret life. A life of unimaginable wealth, beauty, and luxury. And now, by some cruel twist, it was all mine. I stared at the glittering treasures around me, my throat tight. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt hollow. Because the truth was worse than poverty. The truth was that he had denied me joy, not because he couldn't afford it, but because he chose not to share it. The weight of that choice sat heavy on my chest. I rose slowly, brushing dust from my skirt, and turned toward the far end of the warehouse. There, beyond the endless rows of crates, stood a single door painted in deep navy blue. Unlike the rest of the warehouse, it was new, the paint fresh, the handle polished. Something about it pulled me forward. My steps echoed as I crossed the cavernous space, my heart pounding. The brass plate on the door gleamed in the sunlight. Etched into it were 2 words. For Eleanor. My breath caught in my throat. I reached for the handle, my hand shaking, my mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. Was this the secret he had spoken of? The true secret? Something meant only for me? I swallowed hard, turned the knob, and pushed the door open. What I saw inside stopped my heart. The door creaked open, and the stale air of the warehouse gave way to something unexpected, warmth. A soft light spilled out from inside, golden and steady, like sunlight captured in a jar. I stepped in slowly, my heart pounding in my ears, and for the first time in weeks, I felt as though I wasn't standing in Harold's shadow but crossing into a place he had prepared only for me. The room was small compared to the vastness of the warehouse, but it carried a kind of intimacy that startled me. The walls were painted a pale lavender, my favorite color. A rug with soft floral patterns stretched across the wooden floor, and on the far side sat a rocking chair, the very one I had begged Harold to keep when he insisted on selling our old furniture 30 years ago. I hadn't seen it in decades. And then my eyes fell on the shelves. Dozens of them lined the walls, filled with scrapbooks, journals, and photo albums. I stepped closer, my trembling fingers reaching out to pull one down. It was heavy, bound in leather, and the first page made my breath catch. There I was, 22 years old, smiling in my wedding dress, a sunflower tucked behind my ear. My eyes were wide with hope, with dreams of a life that felt like it belonged to both of us. Underneath, in Harold's stiff handwriting, were the words, "My Eleanor, the light of my life." Tears blurred my vision. I turned the pages slowly, each one filled with photographs of me. Teaching in my classroom, stirring soup in the kitchen, reading to our children in bed. Pictures I didn't even know had been taken. Notes were scribbled in the margins. Eleanor at her happiest. Eleanor tired but still beautiful. Eleanor deserves the world. I pressed a hand to my chest, struggling to breathe. Had he loved me? Truly loved me, all this time, but never said it? The anger that had burned inside me minutes ago softened into confusion. Because if he had adored me enough to dedicate this secret room to my memory, why had he spent our life together withholding kindness? Why had he hidden the treasures outside and left me to count pennies and beg for affection? I closed the album and set it down gently. My gaze swept the room again. On a small desk by the rocking chair lay an envelope with my name written in that same familiar, stiff hand. I picked it up, my fingers trembling as I broke the seal. The letter inside was brief. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I know you have questions, perhaps anger, and you are right to feel both. I spent my life building something I could never share with the world, and in the process, I hurt you. The warehouse was my burden, my secret, my proof of worth in a life that often left me feeling less than a man. But this room is my heart. It is yours. It has always been yours. Forgive me if you can. What lies beyond this warehouse now belongs to you. Not just the treasures, but the freedom to finally live. Do not waste it, Eleanor. Do not live small as I did. Yours always, Harold. I let the letter fall to my lap, my eyes closed against the sting of tears. The words rattled inside me. Do not live small as I did. It was almost laughable. I had spent 68 years living small, not because I wanted to, but because he insisted on it. He had controlled every dime, every decision, every dream I dared to have. And now, from the grave, he told me to spread my wings. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. Well, Harold, I whispered, you've given me quite the mess. I sat there for what felt like hours, the rocking chair creaking beneath me as memories of our life together replayed like an old film reel. I remembered our first tiny apartment in St. Louis, where I taped up cracks in the windows with clear plastic during winter because Harold said new panes were too expensive. I remembered the way he'd dismiss my ideas for vacations, saying, "You don't need the beach, Eleanor. You've got everything you need right here." I remembered working 2 jobs when our daughter, Lydia, started college, grading papers by day, waitressing by night, while Harold insisted on keeping the warehouse bills separate, untouchable. And yet, in these albums, he had immortalized me. Not the polished version I showed the world, but the real me. The tired me. The hopeful me. The strong Maine. That contradiction tore at me. Had I been married to a cruel man who denied me joy, or a broken one who didn't know how to share it? I closed my eyes and thought back to the day we first met. I was 19, working at a diner off Route 66. He had walked in, tall and confident, with dark hair slicked back and a smile that turned heads. He ordered a slice of cherry pie and left me a tip far bigger than his meal. Later, he came back and asked if I'd let him take me dancing. My parents thought he was charming. My girlfriends swooned when they saw his car. And me? I thought I'd stumbled onto the beginning of a grand romance. But the grand romance never came. Instead, what came was a life of small sacrifices. Little deaths of my spirit, one compromise at a time. Until I hardly recognized myself anymore. And yet, here was proof he had seen me, loved me, in his own silent way. I rose to my feet, the letter still clutched in my hand, and turned back toward the warehouse. The treasures loomed outside the door, glittering under the weak sunlight streaming through the high windows. Wealth beyond anything I could have imagined. A life beyond coupons, second-hand coats, and patching holes in shoes. But the weight of it crushed me. Because wealth didn't fix loneliness. Gold couldn't erase the decades I had lived in the shadows of a man too proud to let me shine. I stepped back into the warehouse, my heels clicking against the concrete. My eyes moved from crate to crate, from Monet to diamond to violin. And then another thought struck me. Why? Why had Harold hidden all of this, not only from me, but from the world? These weren't just trinkets. These were national treasures. Artifacts worth millions. Did he steal them? Smuggle them? Acquire them through shady deals? The questions burned hot in my chest. If this was the secret he left me, it wasn't just riches. It was responsibility. And maybe danger. I pressed a hand to the nearest crate, steadying myself as the dizziness returned. My heart thudded against my ribs. If the wrong people knew about this. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I pulled it out. A text message glowed on the screen from an unknown number. It read, "We know what he left you. Don't open anything else." The phone slipped from my hands and clattered against the floor. My pulse spiked as I stared at the glowing words. Someone knew. Someone was watching. The treasures around me no longer felt like a gift. They felt like a trap. I bent down, picked up the phone with shaking hands, and backed toward the navy blue door. For the first time since Harold's death, I realized the secret he had left me was far bigger, and far more dangerous, than I had ever imagined. And I was completely, terrifyingly alone. The words on the screen burned into my mind. Asterisk, we know what he left you. Don't open anything else. Asterisk. I stood frozen in the middle of that cavernous warehouse, surrounded by more wealth than I'd ever dreamed, but I had never felt poorer. My fingers trembled as I held the phone, the message still glowing against the dim light. The air seemed thicker now, pressing in on me, carrying with it the heavy knowledge that Harold's secrets hadn't died with him. Someone out there was watching. Someone knew. I locked the warehouse door behind me and stumbled to the car. The silver key weighed like an anchor in my pocket. I drove home on autopilot, the world outside a blur of stoplights and billboards, but inside my chest, fear coiled tighter and tighter. I had no plan, no understanding of what Harold had dragged me into, only the echo of his letter, "Do not live small as I did." But how could I live large when shadows already circled me? At home, the stillness of the house pressed in. The photographs of our children lined the mantel above the cold fireplace, smiling faces frozen in time. Lydia, our eldest, with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, always the skeptic. And Matthew, the younger one, with a heart too soft for his own good. They were grown now, Lydia living in Boston with her husband and teenage boys, Matthew in Denver working for an engineering firm. Both had their own lives, their own families, their own struggles. And me? I was the mother who called too often, the widow they pitied but kept at a distance. I sank onto the couch, phone still in my hand. Should I tell them? Should I involve them in this mess Harold had left behind? My chest tightened as I remembered the last phone call I'd had with Lydia, just 2 weeks after Harold's funeral. "Mom," she'd said, her voice brisk, "I know it's hard, but you need to start thinking about downsizing. That house is too big for you now. Maybe even consider a retirement community. It's safer, and you won't be so isolated." I had swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Lydia, this is my home. I raised you here. I'm not ready to leave." Her sigh crackled over the line. "You can't cling to the past forever. Dad didn't leave much, and you're not exactly rolling in savings. Be practical. Be practical." The words had stung. For decades, I had been nothing but practical, stretching Harold's modest teacher's pension, clipping coupons, taking on odd tutoring jobs just to make ends meet. And all the while, Harold had been hiding riches in plain sight. If only Lydia knew. I leaned my head back against the couch, the ceiling swimming above me. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Matthew, 12 years old, coming home from Little League with a hole in his glove. "Can we get a new one, Mom?" he'd asked, eyes wide with hope. I had smiled and told him we couldn't afford it that month. He had nodded, too used to disappointment for a boy his age. And then Harold had come home that night, silent as ever, and gone straight to his study. I'd sat at the table, patching that old glove with dental floss, while resentment simmered in my chest. How many times had I told myself we were poor? How many times had I let my children settle for less, because Harold insisted there was no more to give? I rose suddenly, anger burning through the fog of fear. No. I wouldn't let Harold's secret rot in that warehouse, and I wouldn't let strangers lurking in the dark dictate what I could or couldn't touch. I grabbed my phone and dialed Matthew. He answered on the third ring, his voice warm but distracted. "Hey Mom. Everything okay?" Hearing his voice softened me, even as my heart pounded. "Matthew, I need to see you. It's important." He hesitated. "I've got a project at work, Mom. Can it wait a week or two?" "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself. "It can't wait. It's about your father." That caught his attention. "Dad? What about him?" "Not over the phone," I said. "Just, can you come this weekend?" A long pause. Then yeah. Okay. I'll come. When I hung up, relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Because even as I planned to confide in Matthew, dread gnawed at me. How could I explain any of this without sounding insane? How could I protect him, and Lydia, from whatever danger lurked outside that warehouse? That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Harold's letter replaying in my mind. Do not live small as I did. Live large. The phrase felt foreign on my tongue. For nearly 70 years, I had lived in the corners, made myself small so others could take up space. I had been the quiet wife, the dutiful mother, the dependable teacher. Always giving, never asking. And now, with diamonds and gold and Monet paintings hidden just a mile away, I had to decide what kind of woman I would be in the time I had left. Morning came heavy, gray clouds sagging low over the neighborhood. I forced myself to dress, to eat a piece of toast I barely tasted, and then I drove back to the warehouse. Every nerve screamed at me not to. The text still haunted me. But I had to know more. The padlock clicked open again, the door groaned, and the cavernous space swallowed me whole. My eyes swept over the glittering treasures, but my feet carried me straight to the navy blue door. The room beyond felt safer than the vast warehouse, its lavender walls and rocking chair a cocoon against the storm brewing outside. I opened another scrapbook. More photos of me. Me at 40, hair streaked with gray, laughing with Lydia's boys at the park. Me at 50, asleep in the armchair with a book on my lap. Me at 62, standing in the garden with dirt on my hands. Always me. I traced the edges of the photographs, my throat tight. Maybe Harold hadn't known how to show his love in life. Maybe his pride or fear had twisted it. But in secret, he had worshipped me. That realization broke something inside me, a grief not for what I'd lost, but for what I had never been given openly. My phone buzzed again, jolting me. Another message from the unknown number. Asterisk last warning. Walk away. Asterisk. I dropped the scrapbook, my heart hammering. My eyes darted to the high windows, the shadows beyond. Was someone out there, watching me right now? Fear surged, but so did defiance. I had lived my whole life obeying men. My father, my husband, even my children in small ways. And where had it gotten me? Invisible. Dismissed. Controlled. Not anymore. I slammed the scrapbook shut, stuffed Harold's letter into my purse, and locked the navy blue door behind me. Then I marched through the warehouse, past crates of jewels and art, to the farthest corner where a stack of old filing cabinets sat under a tarp. Something about them called to me. I yanked the tarp off, dust swirling in the air. Inside the top drawer were folders, neatly labeled, organized, meticulous. Names, dates, receipts. My stomach knotted as I flipped through them. These weren't random treasures. They were acquisitions. Purchases from auctions, private sales, estates. All in Harold's name. My breath caught. He hadn't stolen them. He had bought them. Legally. Quietly. Amassed a fortune under my nose, while I stretched every penny. But why? Before I could piece it together, the warehouse lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out. The cavernous space plunged into darkness. My breath quickened. Someone was here. A creak echoed from the far end of the building. Slow. Deliberate. I wasn't alone. The lights died, and the warehouse plunged into blackness so complete it felt like I'd been swallowed whole. The silence pressed in on me, thick and heavy, broken only by the frantic thud of my heart. My throat tightened. Somewhere in that cavernous space, a floorboard groaned. Someone was here. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. My hands fumbled in my purse until my fingers brushed against the small flashlight I carried since Harold's death. I clicked it on. A thin beam cut through the dark, trembling as badly as my hand. The light swept across crates and shadows, gilded paintings and rows of boxes, but nothing moved. Then another sound, a sharp metallic clang, like a dropped tool. My chest clenched. Who's there? I called, my voice cracking. This is private property. I'll call the police. No answer. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, forcing myself to stand taller. For 68 years, I had bent and bowed, but something inside me snapped. If Harold had left me this kingdom of secrets, then it was mine to defend. I would not cower. The beam of light landed on a figure stepping from between two stacks of crates. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in black from head to toe. A ski mask covered his face, but his voice when he spoke was low and calm. "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Whitmore." My skin prickled. "Who are you? What do you want?" He didn't answer. He just started walking toward me, slow, deliberate steps echoing on the concrete. I stumbled back until my shoulder hit a crate. My flashlight shook in my hand, the beam jittering across his masked face. He stopped a few feet away, his gloved hands empty but menacing nonetheless. "You opened things you weren't supposed to," he said. "Your husband knew the rules. You don't." Rules. The word lodged like ice in my chest. My mind raced. Harold's letter, the acquisitions, the careful records. It all made sense now. This wasn't just a private collection. It was part of something bigger, something Harold had been bound to. "What rules?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. The man tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "The first rule, you keep the treasures hidden. The second, you never, ever involve anyone else. Your husband understood that. You should too." My grip on the flashlight tightened until my knuckles ached. "He's gone. And he left it all to me. That means the rules are mine to make now." For a moment, silence. Then a low chuckle. "You're braver than I expected." He took another step closer. My pulse roared in my ears. Somewhere deep inside, the Eleanor who had patched baseball gloves with dental floss and stretched casseroles for a week stirred to life. I wasn't just a widow in a lavender room of memories. I was a woman with nothing left to lose. I lifted my chin. "If you think I'm going to roll over and let you scare me off, you're mistaken. I've been scared for most of my life. That ends now." The man paused, his shadow looming over me. Then, unexpectedly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black phone. He tapped the screen, then held it out for me to see. On it was a photograph of me leaving the lawyer's office the day he gave me Harold's key. My stomach lurched. They'd been watching me from the beginning. "Walk away," he said softly, almost kindly. "Enjoy the money if you like. But don't dig deeper. If you do, you'll regret it." With that, he turned and melted back into the shadows, his footsteps fading into silence. I stood frozen, my chest heaving, until the warehouse lights flickered back to life. The crates gleamed again, the treasures winking like they were mocking me. I staggered to the navy blue door, slammed it shut behind me, and locked it with trembling hands. My pulse was still pounding as I drove home, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Back in the safety of my living room, I collapsed into the rocking chair Harold had left me. My body shook with anger and fear. So Harold hadn't just left me wealth. He had left me enemies. That night, I barely slept. Images of the masked man haunted me. His calm voice, his warning, the photograph of me on his phone. It all played over and over in my mind. And yet, under the fear, a spark of something new flickered to life. Defiance. All my life, I had obeyed. My father's rules. My husband's rules. Society's rules for what a woman should be: quiet, accommodating, small. Even my children, well-meaning though they were, treated me like someone to be managed, guided, gently pushed out of the way. But Harold's secret had thrown open a door I could no longer close. I had been entrusted with something enormous, dangerous, and yes, empowering. And if others thought they could frighten me into silence, they had underestimated the years I had already survived in silence. The next morning, I set a pot of coffee on the stove and sat at the kitchen table with Harold's letter and the folders I had taken from the warehouse. I spread them out like puzzle pieces. Auction receipts, shipping records, bank transfers, all meticulously organized. And then I saw it. A name that appeared again and again across the documents: Whitestone Holdings. I frowned. I'd never heard Harold mention it. The receipts tied to Whitestone were massive, millions of dollars spent in quiet transactions. And always with Harold's signature at the bottom. What had he been part of? My phone rang, startling me. Matthew's name flashed across the screen. "Mom," he said as soon as I answered, "I booked a flight. I'll be there Friday." Relief washed over me, though it was tinged with dread. I wanted to see him, to share the burden, but what if involving him put him in danger too? Still, the thought of facing this alone terrified me more. "Thank you, Matthew," I whispered. "There's something you need to see." After we hung up, I sat in silence, the ticking of the kitchen clock loud in the empty room. I thought of Lydia, of her practical advice to move into a retirement community, her disbelief if I told her about Monet paintings and masked men. She'd call it grief delirium, or worse, accuse me of inventing stories. But Matthew, sweet, trusting Matthew, he might believe me. He might even help. The days crawled by until Friday. Each creak of the house made me jump. I double-locked the doors, closed the curtains, and kept Harold's letter close. At night, I dreamed of ski masks and shadows. But I also dreamed of the navy blue room, of lavender walls and scrapbooks filled with the woman Harold had seen, even if he'd never said the words aloud. On Friday afternoon, I drove to the airport to pick Matthew up. He hugged me tightly, his tall frame folding around my smaller body. "You look tired, Mom," he said gently. "I've had a lot on my mind," I admitted. We drove home in silence, the hum of the tires filling the gaps. When we pulled into the driveway, Matthew glanced at me. "So, what's going on? What couldn't you tell me over the phone?" I opened my mouth, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I explain it all without sounding insane? The key, the warehouse, the treasures, the masked man, the warning? I took a deep breath. "Your father left me something. Something big. And dangerous." Matthew frowned. "Dangerous? Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'll show you tomorrow," I said quietly. "For now, just trust me." That night, as Matthew slept in his old room, I sat in the kitchen with the folders spread out again. My eyes kept drifting to the name Whitestone Holdings. Whoever they were tied to Harold's secret. Maybe even to the man in the warehouse. The clock struck midnight. My phone buzzed. A new message from the unknown number lit up the screen. This one was worse than the others. It wasn't a warning. It was a photograph. Matthew, taken from across the street, as he wheeled his suitcase into my house earlier that day. My blood turned to ice. The photograph glowed on my phone screen like a knife pressed against my throat. Matthew, captured in grainy resolution, dragging his suitcase across my driveway only hours ago. The text beneath it was short, but it stole the air from my lungs. Asterisk, "We warned you. Walk away or your son pays." Asterisk. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The house was silent except for the faint snore drifting from Matthew's old room. My sweet boy, 40 years old now, an engineer with a gentle heart, slept without knowing the danger that stalked him. For a moment, rage rose hotter than fear. Whoever these people were, they thought they could bully me back into silence. They didn't know who I had become in these last few days. Still, my heart clenched as I stared at the photo. For decades, I had protected Matthew and Lydia from hunger, from disappointment, from the sharp edges of Harold's moods. But how could I protect them from this? I slipped the phone into my pocket and pressed my hands to the cool wood of the table. "Not again," I whispered. "I will not fail my children again." A memory surfaced. Matthew at 8 years old, clutching a toy robot from the store, begging Harold to let him take it home. Harold had barked, "We don't waste money on junk," and marched him out the door, his little shoulders slumped. I had bent down in the parking lot, kissed Matthew's forehead, and promised him he'd get one someday. He never did. Instead, I had tucked away nickels and dimes for months to buy Lydia a winter coat because her old one no longer fit. Sacrifices. Always sacrifices. Now, staring at the glow of that photograph, I realized something sharp. Harold hadn't been the only one hiding things. I had hidden myself, my strength, my ability to fight. For years, I told myself I couldn't push back, that I had to keep the peace. But peace had brought us nothing but silence and shadows. The next morning, Matthew padded into the kitchen, hair messy, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning, Mom." He poured himself coffee, then eyed the papers still spread across the table. You were up late. I hesitated, the weight of the secret pressing down on me. But keeping him blind wasn't protecting him anymore. They already knew he was here. Sit down, Matthew, I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. He frowned but obeyed, sliding into the chair across from me. I folded my hands together, meeting his gaze. There's something I need to tell you about your father. He raised an eyebrow. Dad? Mom, he's been gone for weeks. What is this about? I drew in a deep breath. He left me something. A warehouse. And inside, my voice caught but I pushed through. Inside is more wealth than you can imagine. Art, jewels, gold, things people would kill for. Matthew stared at me, silent for a long moment. Then he gave a short laugh. You're joking. I'm not. I pulled Harold's letter from my purse and slid it across the table. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the stiff handwriting. Look for my secret. It's yours, he read aloud. He glanced back at me, incredulous. Mom, are you saying Dad was rich? That he just, hid it from us? Yes, I said firmly. 4 decades. He built a fortune and never told us. I found records, receipts. Everything was in his name. Matthew leaned back, shaking his head. That doesn't make sense. We struggled my whole childhood. You worked yourself to the bone. He pinched every penny. His voice cracked. Why would he do that? I reached across the table, covering his hand with mine. I don't know, sweetheart. But that's not all. Someone knows. Someone's been watching me. Watching us. His eyes darkened. What do you mean? Wordlessly, I pulled out my phone and showed him the photograph of him in the driveway. The color drained from his face. What the hell? They sent it last night, I said quietly. They've warned me to stop digging. They know about the warehouse. And now they know about you. Matthew ran a hand through his hair, his breathing quick. Mom, this is insane. You should have gone to the police the moment this started. And tell them what? I snapped. That my dead husband left me a secret museum of stolen-looking treasures and now masked men are sending me threats? They'd think I've lost my mind. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years, respect. So what do we do? The question startled me. I'd expected him to dismiss me, to call me paranoid, to insist we pack up and run. But instead, he was asking me. I straightened, my voice firm. We fight back. Carefully. Quietly. We find out what Whitestone Holdings is, and we use that knowledge. Matthew frowned. Whitestone. I pushed the folder toward him, tapping the name that appeared again and again in the receipts. This company is tied to everything your father bought. I think they're behind the threats. He scanned the papers, his brow furrowed. I can look into this. I have contacts, friends who work in finance, in law. Maybe they can tell me more. Relief flickered, but fear followed. Every step deeper was another step into danger. Still, I nodded. Be careful. Don't let them know you're looking. That afternoon, Matthew set up his laptop on the dining table, diving into searches and databases while I paced the living room. The house felt smaller with the weight of secrets pressing in from every side. Every time a car slowed outside, my heart leapt into my throat. By evening, Matthew leaned back with a grim expression. I found something. Whitestone Holdings is a shell corporation. No official office, no board members listed. Just a trail of paper that goes in circles. It's designed to hide money, Mom. To hide assets. I swallowed hard. Your father was hiding them for Whitestone? Or with them, Matthew said. Either way, it wasn't just his secret. It was theirs too. Silence stretched between us. Then he looked at me, his voice softer. Mom, this is dangerous. If they've already threatened you, threatened me, maybe we should walk away. Just let it go. I shook my head, fire sparking in my chest. I've walked away from everything my whole life, Matthew. From my dreams, from my voice, from the truth. Not anymore. If I stop now, they'll own me just like your father did. I won't let that happen. Not to me. Not to you. His eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I saw the boy who used to hold my hand when storms rattled the windows. Okay, he said finally. Then we do this together. That night, we made a plan. Matthew would dig deeper into Whitestone, using every connection he had. I would return to the warehouse, search for more clues in Harold's records. Together, we would unravel the truth. But as I lay in bed, listening to the wind rattle the shutters, doubt crept in. Had Harold meant for me to fight? Or had he only meant for me to inherit? Was I strong enough for this battle, or was I leading my son into danger he didn't deserve? Sometime after midnight, the doorbell rang. The chime echoed through the house, sharp and startling. I sat up in bed, heart racing. No one visited at this hour. I slipped into my robe, crept down the hallway, and peeked through the curtains. A car idled at the curb, headlights cutting through the darkness. A figure stood at the door, tall and still, a package in hand. I didn't move. The doorbell rang again, louder this time. Matthew appeared behind me, his face pale. "Don't open it," he whispered. We waited breathless, as the figure set the package on the porch and retreated to the car. The engine growled, the taillights disappeared into the night. Cautiously, Matthew unlocked the door and brought the package inside. It was plain, brown, no return address. Together, we opened it. Inside was a single object wrapped in velvet. When I pulled back the fabric, my breath caught. It was a photograph, black and white, old but clear. Harold, standing beside two men in suits, shaking hands in front of a sign that read, "Whitestone Holdings, 1978. And scrawled across the bottom, in fresh ink, were 4 chilling words. He was one of us. The photograph lay on the table like a curse. Harold, young and full of purpose, shaking hands beneath a sign that read Whitestone Holdings, 1978. The handwriting at the bottom burned into my mind. He was one of us. For hours, Matthew and I sat in silence, staring at the evidence. Each tick of the clock on the wall seemed louder than the last. Finally, Matthew broke the quiet. "Mom. This changes everything." He wasn't just dealing with them. He was part of them. From the very start. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion pressing down like a weight. It explains the secrecy. The penny pinching. He wasn't hoarding for himself. He was funneling everything through Whitestone. But why? Matthew's voice cracked. Why hide it from us? Why live like we were barely scraping by when he was part of this? He gestured at the photograph. I had no answer. Only a gnawing ache in my chest. Harold's voice echoed in memory. His sharp dismissals, his endless control. Perhaps keeping us small kept him safe. Or perhaps it was simply easier to rule over a family that had no power. A knock at the door startled us both. This time, it wasn't the sharp chime of the bell but the heavy, impatient pounding of someone who belonged inside. Matthew froze. I rose, my legs trembling, and opened the door. There she was, Lydia. My daughter. Her blonde hair was pulled into a neat bun, her blazer sharp, her heels clicking as she swept past me without so much as a hug. She smelled faintly of expensive perfume and impatience. "Well," she said, her voice cutting. "I thought you'd finally call me. But of course, you didn't." Matthew texted. "Said you're in over your head with Dad's leftovers." She eyed the table, the papers, the photograph. "And clearly you are." "Lydia," I began. She turned on me, her blue eyes fierce. "Why didn't you tell me? Why am I always the last to know?" Matthew bristled. "Because you never listen, that's why." "Don't start, Matt," she snapped. "This isn't about you. It's about Mom, and whatever circus Dad left behind." I stepped between them before the old sibling rivalries could flare further. "Enough. Sit down, both of you." They obeyed reluctantly, their glares darting across the table like knives. I gathered my breath and laid it all out. The warehouse, the treasures, the threats, the company name that tied it all together. Lydia's face shifted from disbelief to dawning realization. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her arms folded. So, Dad was rich, he was dirty, and now people want what he left behind. And you two think what? That you're going to take them on? You're going to outwit an organization that's probably been laundering money for decades. Her tone was dismissive, but beneath it, I saw fear flicker. She was rattled, even if she'd never admit it. We don't have a choice, Matthew said. They've already threatened us. Threatened me. You too, if they find out you're here. Lydia's lips thinned. Which is exactly why you should have never dragged me into this. I slammed my palm on the table, surprising them both, and myself. Enough. You think I wanted this? That I asked for secrets and shadows? Harold left this mess, and now it's on us to clean it up. We can either stand together, or we'll be picked apart one by one. Silence followed, heavy and unyielding. Finally, Lydia's shoulders sagged. She glanced at the photograph again, her voice quieter. I always knew he was hiding something. The way he locked his study. The way he never let me near his files. I thought it was just control. But this, she shook her head. This is bigger than us. Matthew leaned forward, his voice urgent. That's why we need to move fast. Whitestone isn't going to stop. If Dad was one of them, they're going to want whatever he kept hidden. And Mom has the keys. Lydia's gaze snapped to me. The warehouse. I nodded slowly. There may be more inside. More than art and jewels. Maybe records. Names. Proof. Her expression hardened. Then we're sitting on dynamite. We agreed, grudgingly, that we needed to return to the warehouse together. But the night stretched long before us, restless and dangerous. Matthew set up camp at the table again, scrolling through financial records, while Lydia paced the kitchen like a caged animal. I retreated to my room, but sleep was impossible. Instead, memories rose unbidden. Harold at our wedding, slipping a gold band on my finger with that charming smile I once thought meant safety. Harold at the dinner table, his voice curt as he asked the children about school but never really listened. Harold standing in the garage late at night, phone pressed to his ear, voice hushed but urgent. How much of my life had been a performance for him? How much of his life had been a performance for me? By morning, the decision was made. We would go back to the warehouse. But first, we needed to test whether Whitestone was already watching. Matthew drove us downtown in his old pickup, Lydia in the passenger seat, me tucked in the back. We circled the block near the warehouse twice, scanning for suspicious cars. A black sedan sat parked across the street, two men inside, their faces obscured by sunglasses. Subtle, Lydia muttered. They're not even trying to hide, Matthew said grimly. I pressed my hand to my chest, my heart pounding. We can't go in like this. They'll follow us. Lydia turned, her eyes sharp. So we outsmart them. What followed was a blur of strategy. Parking 3 blocks away, slipping into an alley, cutting through a row of abandoned shops until we reached the back of the warehouse unseen. The key turned in the lock, and we slipped inside. The air was stale, heavy with dust and silence. Rows of crates loomed in the dim light, unchanged since my first visit. But with Lydia's sharp eyes and Matthew's careful hands, we began searching systematically. It was Lydia who found it, a hidden drawer in the desk Harold had kept in the corner office. She pried it open, her fingers steady despite the tension. Inside were folders, thick with papers. Contracts. Ledgers. Letters with Whitestone's name emblazoned on the letterhead. Matthew flipped through them, his voice low. This is it. Proof. Dad wasn't just laundering money. He was their partner. Maybe even one of their founders. My stomach turned. Harold hadn't just hidden treasures. He had built an empire of shadows. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the warehouse. A metallic clang, followed by footsteps. We froze. Someone's here, Lydia hissed. Matthew shoved the papers back into the drawer and closed it. I held my breath, every muscle tense. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Then a voice called out, deep and commanding. Mrs. Whitmore. We know you're here. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Lydia's eyes widened. They followed us. Matthew grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the far exit. We darted between crates, our footsteps muffled on the concrete. The voice echoed again, closer now. You have something that belongs to us. Give it back, and no one gets hurt. We reached the side door, but as Matthew yanked it open, a figure blocked the way, a tall man in a dark suit, his expression cold. He held up a photograph, the same one we had received, and let it flutter to the floor. You've already been warned. Lydia stiffened beside me. What do you want? She demanded. The man's smile was thin. Everything your husband kept. Every record, every asset. Whitestone cleans up its messes. I felt Matthew squeeze my hand, silent but steady. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. I had spent my whole life giving, time, care, sacrifices, but I would not give them Harold's secrets. Not like this. I lifted my chin, my voice firm. You'll get nothing from me. The man's smile faded. His eyes narrowed. Then you've made your choice. Behind him, more footsteps echoed. More men, closing in. And just as fear threatened to swallow me whole, a loud crash split the air. One of the windows shattered, glass raining down. Smoke billowed in, thick and choking. Matthew pulled me back, Lydia covering her mouth with her sleeve. Shadows moved through the haze, chaotic and sudden. Shouts rang out, followed by the unmistakable sound of a struggle. Someone else had arrived. And I couldn't tell if they were here to save us, or finish what Whitestone had started. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Smoke poured through the shattered window, rolling across the floor in thick gray waves. My eyes burned, my lungs seized, and the sound of men shouting ricocheted off the steel walls. Mom. Matthew tugged me back, his voice muffled through his sleeve. Lydia coughed beside us, her eyes wide with panic. Through the haze, figures moved, dark suits clashing with shadows that fought back. The sharp crack of fists meeting flesh, the crash of crates toppling, the heavy grunt of men locked in combat. I couldn't tell who was who, only that the Whitestone men were no longer in control. Go! A voice boomed through the smoke. Not Whitestone. Strong, commanding. Get her out. A figure emerged, tall and broad-shouldered, face covered with a black scarf. He grabbed Lydia by the arm and shoved her toward the exit. Move. Matthew stepped in front of me, protective, but the stranger raised his hands. I'm not your enemy. You don't have time to argue. I hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. Something in his tone carried no malice, only urgency. Together we stumbled toward the side door, the stranger clearing a path with brutal efficiency. 2 Whitestone men lunged at him, but he dispatched them with swift, practiced blows. Whoever he was, he'd fought battles like this before. We burst into the night air, coughing and gasping. The warehouse loomed behind us, smoke spilling from its broken windows. The stranger slammed the door shut, then turned to face us. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, pulling down the scarf. His face was rugged, lined with years of hard living, his dark eyes sharp. Name's Cal Donovan. I knew your husband. The world tilted. You what? Cal glanced over his shoulder, scanning the shadows. This isn't safe. We've got minutes before they regroup. Follow me if you want to live. Lydia bristled. Oh, that's reassuring. Another man with secrets. Lydia, I warned, my voice raw. Cal's gaze softened as it landed on me. Harold and I served together. Long time ago. He wasn't always the man you knew. He built things with Whitestone, yes, but he also kept things from them. Things they want back. That's why you're in danger now. Matthew clenched his fists. And we're supposed to trust you? Cal's expression hardened. You already did. You're still breathing. Silence hung, broken only by the distant wail of a siren. Finally, I nodded. We'll go. He led us down an alley, weaving through backstreets until we reached a beat-up sedan parked beneath a flickering streetlight. We piled in, the upholstery smelling faintly of smoke and gasoline. Cal drove fast, his eyes flicking constantly to the mirrors. Your husband left you more than treasure, he said, his voice low. He left you leverage. Documents, names, Proof that could burn Whitestone to the ground. That's why they're circling. That's why they won't stop. I gripped the seatbelt, my heart pounding. And you, why are you here? Because Harold saved my life once. Because he made mistakes he couldn't undo. And because he asked me, years ago, that if anything ever happened I'd protect you. My throat tightened. Harold, for all his cruelty and silence, had left behind this, a man who claimed to protect me. But trust came hard after a lifetime of lies. Lydia crossed her arms, her tone sharp. So what's your plan? Hide us? Drag us into more fights? Or are you just another vulture circling what Dad left behind? Cal didn't flinch. My plan is to keep you alive long enough to decide what you want. Do you want to sell Whitestone back their secrets and buy your safety? Or do you want to use them to finish what Harold started? The car fell into silence. Matthew stared out the window, Lydia's jaw clenched tight, and I sat caught between fear and fury. Finally, I spoke. I want the truth. All of it. I want to know who my husband really was. And I want Whitestone to pay, not with money, but with their power. They've taken enough from me. Cal nodded, approval flickering in his eyes. Then you're going to need allies. He drove us to a safe house on the edge of the city, an old farmhouse, shutters sagging, but fortified inside with steel locks and blackout curtains. We huddled in the kitchen, the single bulb casting shadows across our tired faces. Matthew leaned forward. If Dad really had proof against Whitestone, it's in those files. But we barely scratched the surface before they came. Cal unrolled a map of the city, pinning it to the table. Whitestone has storage sites, safe houses, men on their payroll everywhere. But they can't be everywhere at once. We need to hit them where it hurts, and use their own paranoia against them. Lydia scoffed. And you think we're capable of that? My mother is 68. Matthew's an engineer, not a spy. I'm a lawyer, not a soldier. I straightened in my chair, fire burning in my chest. I'm also a woman who has spent her entire life cleaning up other people's messes. Don't mistake patience for weakness. Lydia's mouth snapped shut. Cal smirked faintly. She's tougher than you think. And you're all that stands between Whitestone and what they want. That makes you dangerous. For the first time, I felt it, not just fear but power. We spent the night planning. Matthew would digitize the documents we recovered, spreading them across encrypted drives so Whitestone couldn't erase them all. Lydia would use her legal expertise to trace shell corporations and uncover hidden accounts. And I would lead, making the decisions Harold never trusted me with. By dawn, exhaustion weighed heavy, but purpose burned brighter. For the first time, we weren't just reacting. We were preparing. But Whitestone wasn't idle. 2 days later, as Matthew worked at his laptop and Lydia scribbled notes across legal pads, I stepped outside to breathe the cool morning air. The fields stretched quiet, the horizon pink with sunrise. Then I saw it. A drone, humming low, circling overhead. My blood ran cold. Cal. I shouted, pointing. He rushed out, his face darkening. They've found us. The drone dipped, buzzed closer, then zipped away toward the city. A scout. A warning. Cal's voice was grim. We've got hours, maybe less, before they send men. Pack up. We move now. Inside, panic rippled. Lydia cursed under her breath, Matthew slammed his laptop shut, and I shoved papers into bags. But beneath the fear was something else, a determination I hadn't known I possessed. We loaded the car, Cal scanning the horizon, his hand resting near the weapon at his hip. Just as we were about to leave, a phone rang. My phone. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A man's voice, smooth and cold, slithered through the line. Mrs. Whitmore. You've made things difficult. But you don't have to suffer. Hand over what your husband kept. Walk away, and we let your children live. My grip tightened on the phone. And if I don't? The voice chuckled. Then you watch them die one by one. Starting with your daughter. She's always been ambitious. Ambition makes people careless. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone heavy in my hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Lydia's voice trembled. What did they say? I met her eyes, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at me. The crunch of tires on gravel froze us all. Headlights cut through the mist, sweeping across the sagging porch of the farmhouse. Cal swore under his breath. They're here sooner than I thought. My pulse roared in my ears, every beat like a hammer. Matthew dragged Lydia behind the window frame while Cal darted toward the back, checking sight lines. I stayed rooted for a moment, clutching my phone, the phantom of that cold voice still curling around me. They wanted my children dead. Not again, I thought. Not while I still had breath. Eleanor. Cal's voice snapped me out of it. He thrust a handgun into my palm. The weight of it shocked me. You might have to use it. I looked down at the weapon, the steel cold and foreign in my grip. 68 years I had played the quiet wife, the silent witness. And now, in this crumbling farmhouse, I was holding a gun. I nodded once. Then I'll use it. The first vehicle pulled into the yard, sleek black, far too polished for these back roads. Doors opened, figures spilled out, shadows in dark suits with glinting weapons in their hands. A second car followed, then a third. Whitestone wasn't taking chances. Matthew muttered, "There's no way we can fight them all." Cal crouched by the window, loading his rifle with a quick, practiced motion. "We're not fighting them all. We're surviving. We just need enough time." Lydia whispered, "For what?" Cal glanced at me, then at the bags of files stacked by the door. For her to decide whether to run or finish this. I drew a deep breath, the decision solidifying like iron inside me. We finish it. The words surprised even me, but they felt true. Whitestone wouldn't stop if we ran. They'd hunt us until nothing was left. No, it had to end tonight. The men outside fanned into formation. Their leader stepped forward, tall and lean, with a face too smooth, too calm, as though violence were merely another business transaction. His voice carried easily across the yard. "Mrs. Whitmore," he called, almost politely. "You've caused a great deal of trouble. Hand over what your husband left, and I promise your children won't be harmed. Resist, and this farmhouse becomes your grave." His words slithered into the walls. Lydia flinched, Matthew's jaw tightened. I stepped to the window, gun heavy at my side. "You'll have to come in and take it." Silence followed, then the leader laughed softly. "So be it." He lifted a hand. His men advanced. The first shots shattered the night. Glass exploded from the front windows, bullets ripping into the walls. We ducked, Cal firing back with ruthless precision. Matthew shoved a desk against the doorway for cover, while Lydia crawled to drag the files out of direct sight. My body shook with adrenaline, my ears ringing. The farmhouse groaned under the assault. But I didn't cower. Something inside me had broken free. The quiet, obedient woman was gone. "Back." Cal barked, motioning us toward the rear hall. "They'll breach the front." We scrambled, crouching low as bullets chewed through wood and plaster. Cal laid suppressing fire, his movements sharp and sure. For every shot he took, a Whitestone man fell, but there were too many. The back hall opened into a cellar door. We shoved it open, stumbling down rough wooden steps into the cool dampness below. It smelled of earth and mildew, but it was cover. Cal slammed the door shut just as the front of the house cracked with splintering wood. Boots thundered inside. "Mom," Matthew hissed, eyes wide in the dim light. "We're trapped." "No." I forced my voice steady. "We're cornered, which is different. Corners can be fought out of." Cal's gaze flicked toward me, measuring. "She's right. But we'll need more than bullets. What did Harold leave? Think." I rifled through memory, back to the nights Harold had come home reeking of smoke and secrecy, muttering about leverage, about fire. He said, Whitestone's power wasn't just in their money. It was in the files they kept on others. Blackmail, extortion. He said if the truth came out, they'd collapse. Matthew straightened, breath catching. "Then that's it. If we can upload everything, names, accounts, evidence, to the public, they lose their grip. Lydia shook her head sharply. We can't just dump it. If it's not authenticated, it'll be dismissed as conspiracy. We need a platform, a legal anchor, something undeniable. And we're supposed to do that while they're trying to kill us? Matthew shot back. Cal's jaw clenched. You won't get another chance. Either you expose them tonight, or you spend the rest of your lives running. The cellar door rattled. Shouts echoed above us, boots pounding across the floorboards. They were searching. A surge of clarity hit me. Matthew, you still have that satellite hotspot? He blinked, then nodded. Yeah. In my bag. Then set it up. Upload everything we've got to every outlet you can reach. Press, watchdogs, public servers. Lydia, you draft a statement. Something sharp, something that makes them listen. We'll pin their crimes to their name before they can silence us. They stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Lydia whispered, Mom. No arguments, I snapped, sharper than I'd ever been. We end this now. The rattle at the cellar door grew louder. A voice barked orders. The wood creaked under pressure. Cal motioned for silence. They're coming through. Get ready. Matthew's fingers flew across his laptop, hotspot glowing. Files transferred, progress bars creeping forward. Lydia scribbled furiously, her lawyer's precision sharpening words into daggers. I crouched beside Cal, gripping the gun tight. The cellar door burst open. Shadows spilled down the stairs. Down. Cal roared. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off stone. I raised the weapon, my arms trembling but steady enough, and fired. The recoil They're stalling, Cal hissed. They want to keep us pinned while the leader decides what to do. Above, the farmhouse groaned again, then a new sound, crackling. My stomach dropped. Fire, Lydia whispered. They're burning us out. Smoke seeped through the floorboards, curling into the cellar. Heat pressed down, oppressive and suffocating. Matthew cursed, typing faster. Almost there, just a few more minutes. Cal fired another burst up the stairs. You don't have minutes. Yes, we do, I said firmly. We make them. The smoke thickened, stinging eyes and throats. I tore strips of cloth from my sleeve, pressing them into Matthew's and Lydia's hands. Keep going. Then I rose, stepping halfway up the cellar stairs. My hands shook, but my voice was steady. I know you can hear me, I called into the flames. The leader's voice drifted back, calm, cold. Mrs. Whitmore. Surrender, and your children live. They live because I fight, I spat. And the world will know who you are before this night ends. A pause, then a low laugh. You think anyone will believe the widow of Harold Whitmore? You're just a woman clutching at shadows. Anger surged through me, white-hot. I'm not just his widow. I'm the proof of everything you've tried to bury. And I will burn you before you bury me. The laptop chimed. Upload complete. Matthew's voice broke. It's out. All of it. Every file, every name. It's everywhere. For the first time, the leader's composure cracked. A shout rang out. Men scrambled. The fire roared higher, consuming the farmhouse. Cal grabbed my arm. We have to move now. We barreled through a narrow cellar tunnel Harold must have once used for smuggling, crawling through dirt and roots until we burst into the open field behind the house. Flames engulfed the farmhouse, the night sky glowing orange. Whitestone's men scattered in disarray. Some shouted into phones, others fled into their cars. The leader stood rigid, watching the fire as though it had betrayed him. Then he saw me. Our eyes locked across the flames. His face twisted, fury barely contained. This isn't over, he mouthed, before disappearing into the smoke. We stood panting in the field, soot-stained and trembling. The farmhouse collapsed behind us, sparks shooting into the dark. Lydia clutched her chest. Mom. You did it. It's out. They can't stop it now. Matthew grinned, though his face was streaked with ash. Whitestone's finished. Cal's gaze lingered on me. No. Not finished. Wounded. Cornered animals bite hardest. But you've cut them deeper tonight than anyone else ever dared. I sank to my knees in the grass, the adrenaline finally ebbing. My hands shook, the gun slipping from my grip. For the first time since Harold's death, I let myself cry, not from fear but from release. We had survived. We had fought back. And though the war wasn't over, the world finally knew the truth. Dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pale gold. As the first light touched the wreckage of the farmhouse, I realized something profound. This wasn't Harold's story anymore. It was mine. And I was just getting started. The farmhouse was gone by morning, only ashes where walls had once stood. The fire had devoured everything Whitestone tried to bury us with, but somehow, we had walked out alive. I stood in the field, the dew on the grass soaking my shoes, the smoke still curling into the pale blue sky. The air smelled of endings and beginnings all at once. Matthew stood beside me, soot-streaked but unbroken. Lydia held my arm, her eyes puffy from both smoke and tears. Cal leaned against the hood of his car, silent, watchful, like a soldier who'd seen this before. The war wasn't over, but the worst night of our lives was behind us. For the first time since Harold's death, I could breathe. "Mom," Lydia whispered, her voice catching, "it's over. You did it." Her words hit deeper than the gunfire, deeper than the smoke. You did it. For decades I had been told I wasn't enough. Not clever enough, not tough enough, not brave enough. But here I was, 68 years old, standing on scorched earth, alive because I fought. I turned to them both. "No. We did it." The three of us collapsed into each other's arms, clinging like we were afraid the world might pull us apart again. For years, I had carried the guilt of being a distant mother, of letting Harold's shadows rule our home. But here, in this embrace, I felt it melt away. We weren't broken anymore. We were whole. Cal cleared his throat gently, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "You'll need to disappear for a while. Whitestone won't fall overnight. They'll thrash around before the walls close in." I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders. "Then we'll face it together. No more secrets. No more silence." He gave a small, respectful nod. Harold would have wanted that. I looked toward the smoking ruins. Harold wanted a lot of things. But this fight, this truth, he left it for me. And I've finally claimed it. The sun climbed higher, gold spilling across the fields. Birds rose from the trees, as if reminding us that life, stubborn and wild, always finds a way back. We drove away that morning, not in silence, but in peace. The days that followed were strange and sweet. News broke like a dam bursting. Whitestone's name splashed across every headline, files pouring into the hands of journalists, activists, prosecutors. Senators demanded hearings, CEOs scrambled for cover. The mighty empire trembled under the weight of truth. Neighbors called me brave. Strangers sent letters. A woman from Ohio wrote, "You gave me courage to leave my abusive husband." A young man in California said, "Because of you, I spoke up at work." Their words wrapped around me like a quilt. I hadn't just fought for my children. I had cracked something open for others too. Lydia moved back into my house for a while. She cooked with me in the evenings, her sharp edges softening into laughter I hadn't heard since she was a girl. Matthew fixed the porch swing Harold had let rot for years. We sat out there at night, the chain creaking gently, the stars above us, talking about everything we'd left unsaid. For the first time, we were a family that didn't just endure each other, we cherished each other. One quiet Sunday morning, I walked alone to the little churchyard where Harold's grave rested. I brought no flowers, only honesty. I stood over the stone, the wind tugging at my hair. "Harold," I began softly, "I don't know if you'd be proud of me or furious. Maybe both. You wanted to shield me from the fire, but all you did was keep me in the dark. I wish you'd trusted me. I wish you'd seen how strong I really was." I paused, my throat tightening. "But I forgive you. And I thank you, for the keys, for the chance to finish what you couldn't. Your secrets nearly broke me, but they also gave me purpose. And purpose is a gift." I laid my hand on the cool stone. "Rest now. I'll take it from here. As I turned to leave, the morning sun broke through the clouds, bathing the graveyard in gold. I smiled through my tears. Months passed. Whitestone's leaders were indicted, their empire dismantled piece by piece. Cal drifted in and out of our lives like a guardian, never asking for thanks, only ensuring we stayed safe until the storm quieted. One evening, as he prepared to leave for good, I stopped him on the porch. Cal, I said, thank you. Not just for saving us, but for reminding me who I could be. He tipped his head, his weathered face softening. You didn't need me to remind you, Eleanor. You just needed a spark. And now you're a fire no one can put out. He drove off into the twilight, and I never saw him again. But his words stayed. On my 70th birthday, Lydia and Matthew threw me a small party in the backyard. The house was alive with laughter, the table covered in food, the air filled with the smell of apple pie. At one point, Matthew raised his glass. To Mom, the bravest woman I know. You taught us that it's never too late to stand up, to fight back, and to live fully. We're proud to be your children. I tried to speak, but the lump in my throat was too thick. Instead, I smiled, tears streaming down my face, and lifted my glass back. In that moment, surrounded by love, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades: peace. I had spent my life serving everyone else, carrying their needs until my back bent under the weight. But now, at the dusk of my years, I finally stood tall. Not as Harold's wife, not as a shadow, but as Eleanor Whitmore. The truth was out. My family was safe. And my story, my real story, had just begun. As the sun set that evening, I sat on the porch swing, the cool breeze carrying the scent of lilacs. Lydia hummed in the kitchen, Matthew laughed at something on the phone, and I leaned back, eyes closed. Life was fragile, yes. Painful, unpredictable, even cruel. But it was also beautiful. And I, a 68-year-old widow who had once thought her life was over, had discovered that sometimes the sweetest chapters are written last. I whispered to the fading sky, thank you. And in my heart, I knew Harold heard me. My love. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.